But you never know that you could. And when you feel that way, ain't it good, good dancing in the red and gold. Dancing in the red and gold.
What's up, Faithful? Welcome to the 49er Faithful UK Live. As always, I'm your host, Paul Hope, and today we're going to be discussing our reaction to the Super Bowl, the Debo trade request, and just how many fireballs does one man need. And joining me to break all this down, and much, much more, I'm sure, it is, of course, Gareth Ellis.
Good evening, Paul. Good evening, everyone. How's your head from 2 days ago, 3 days ago?
Yeah, as I said to you off air, Gareth, I was expecting a lot later evening on Sunday. Obviously, I don't drink alcohol these days, so I wasn't as bad as what some may have been, which we're going to get to. So, as I said at the start of the show, Gareth, just how many fireballs does one man need? But before we get started, I do need to address the elephant in the room, and that is Lee isn't joining us tonight, and it isn't because he's still recovering from Sunday. It is because he's at the Stadium of Light watching the mighty Sunderland take on Luton Town. But Gareth, it's fair to say El Presidente was going to do this on Sunday, wasn't he, buddy? I mean, how many fireballs can you see there?
I'm glad he's still got them in the shot glasses and not all over the tray.
Well, we still don't know who's to blame for that infamous night in Edinburgh. Lee blames you, you blame Lee, but
I can't remember actually.
I saw that photo,
quite convenient.
And Neil Watson and myself both had the fear when we saw that photo, because it is a bit of a tradition of the 49er Faithful UK. The event on Sunday in Liverpool, Lee was a little bit nervous that they didn't have Fireball on the menu. But look at him there. Look how happy he is, Gareth, with his new glasses on, his bottle of Fireball.
Yeah, it's half bottle of Fireball, I think. So someone's been having a nip at that on the train.
Yeah. And also, we're not going to get dragged into the contract negotiations that Naji Kara is currently going through and why he is absent tonight. Possibly, Gareth, that could be the drama for the off-season. But we are going to start the Super Bowl. The new champion is an NFC team, but sadly, it's not the Niners. You didn't watch it live.
No.
I did. So you said you've caught up on some of the highlights and you've seen some of the news kicking about social media. Did you enjoy seeing the Chiefs get a bit of a humbling, Gareth, or were you just not bothered?
I enjoyed seeing the Chiefs getting a bit of a humbling, and I've concentrated on that rather than the Eagles winning. I think it is mostly. I think it's been the Eagles fans. I mean Sirianni. I think I saw that meme where he's got the most slappable face in the NFL. I didn't necessarily disagree with that, but I think the Chiefs have got some quite likable players, some players that you'd root for, like Saquon Barkley. So seeing some of those guys win, I've got no huge objection to that. But it was nice to see the Chiefs humbled and the Chiefs blown away. It's just that frustration of that performance from the Chief was about 365 days too late for my liking. Why couldn't they have crumbled that way last year? But there we go.
Yeah, I have to admit, as you said there, the Eagles demolished the two-time defending champions. The score doesn't do it justice. It was 40-22 in New Orleans. But as I said to you off air, for me, the game was done at half-time.
Yeah, it looked boring. It looked boring from the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I went through to Darlington. I was at the Darlington Steam, cheeky plug, watch party. I was sat with a Cowboys fan, a Bears fan, a Jags fan, and an Eagles fan. And I have to say, Gareth, the Eagles fan was the calmest man in the room. But watching that performance, it took us back, as you said, last year. Ellen Road, 500 of the Faithful. We went on the emotional roller coaster and we literally lost the Super Bowl in the dying seconds in overtime.
Don't remind me.
But my thought was taken back to there because heading into this one, I thought you can't bet against Mahomes and the Chiefs. And like the blowout loss against the Buccaneers, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I didn't see it coming, Gareth. I don't think anybody scored perfect points apart from Kev Williams. Interestingly enough, he scored perfect points, didn't he?
Again,
the spreadsheet.
He's very, very fortunate, that boy. Very fortunate indeed.
But no surprise, Jalen Hurts was named Super Bowl MVP. Though I did like it when he himself said, defense wins championships. I mean, the Cooper DeJean pick six, I'll have to admit, that was loudly cheered. I think it helped that there was a few Chiefs fans at the watch party I was at, and they were very bullish at the start. But that was the one moment that got me thinking that everybody was up. And I'm not sure if you've seen, but Will Gavin, friend of the show, Talk Sport, his commentary for that pick six has gone viral. I think the Eagles themselves may have shared it. So he was commentating for Talk Sport, and I've shared it on socials. I mean, cheeky plug, he's done an interview with Fred Warner. If you haven't seen that, do head over to YouTube. And it did get me thinking, Will Gavin gets all the best guests, Gareth? You know, over the years, he's had Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, I think he's done Kittle. There's someone else that he's interviewed, but I just can't think of who it is.
Can't be anyone of great importance, clearly.
But going back to, like I said, the Eagles fan was sat with my friend Chris, who was a Cowboys fan. So there's a sentence I never thought I'd hear me say. But as the night went on, I think the NFL fans united because this was the matchup nobody wanted. I'll be honest, I drove down to Darlington and it was like the most underwhelming Super Bowl build-up all week. I kind of was excited that I was going out to watch football. But the game itself, Gareth, I wasn't looking forward to.
No, I mean, there's a reason I didn't bother to stay up and watch it. I mean, partly work-related, but partly no interest. I didn't really particularly want to see it. I did think we said on our previous show, I thought we all agreed it would probably be a close game. I think we talked about how the Chiefs would probably edge it. I think we were all badly wrong on that one. It's a shame because, it sounds like it wasn't actually much of a spectacle to watch. It may well go down as one of the dull Super Bowls. I think over recent years we've had far more good Super Bowls than bad Super Bowls over the last 10 years. I think there's only been a couple of really sort of dull games. I mean, I think the Patriots Rams one wasn't particularly great, was it? So, but we've had some good ones. Even ones we've been on the bad side of, I think have been good games. But interesting to see the Chiefs humbled as badly as they were. Interesting to see how everything caught up. I did find it amusing that DeAndre Hopkins came out and was screaming about where's your conspiracy about the refs now. And it's kind of like you've lost. That's the point. You didn't get any calls in your way, and look what happened. You've lost. So I think he'd lost sight of what point he was trying to make. I think we've all seen that there was potentially a few calls that maybe the Chiefs should have got, but this particular game they didn't. And it probably didn't affect the outcome if they had a couple of those calls. But it sounded like to me there wasn't a lot contentious. It sounds like the Eagles just put them to the sword straight away, and the Chiefs O-line in particular, I think, my pet subject at the moment, the O-line, is look what happens. You can have all the quarterbacks and defense can be the best in the league. If you haven't got an offensive line that can keep your quarterback up and operating, you don't have a lot on the offensive side. So there it is. That shows you what happens when you get dominated on both lines of scrimmage. You get blown out.
Well, what was interesting, Gareth, it was a miserable night for Mahomes, as you said, sacked 6 times, recorded 3 turnovers. But interestingly, JJ Watt tweeted out that the Eagles didn't blitz the Chiefs once in the Super Bowl. It's very similar to what the Bucs did against them in 2021. And it made me think there's been a lot of talk about Salah coming back, the Niners going back to the system under Salah, that front four that was dominant. And it just goes to show you that great edge rushers can be neutralised with no middle push. dominant interior rushes can be thwarted with no edge threat, as JJ Watt says there. But what was great was the combination of what the Eagles did was they took away the escape lanes for Mahomes. So when he did get out of the pocket, he had nowhere to go. And they just dominated the game. I mean, as you said there, I've got some stats here because, I like my stats. The
do like a stat.
time of possession was interesting. So the Eagles had 36 minutes and 59 seconds of time of possession. The Chiefs, 23 minutes and 1 second.
It's domination.
And what was strange, you said it off air, like, the Super Bowl is where most neutrals might watch one game of American football a year. And there were certainly a few people like that at the watch party that I was at. And they were bored. People were going home at half time. I've been into work today, and people were a little bit like, it was 34-0 at one point. It looked like the Chiefs might get shut out. And we've never seen a shutout in the Super Bowl. And what was interesting is the Eagles took everybody out. And then they went to play kind of prevent defense, which, as I've said to you, the score looked better than what it was. Because to me, you said about the 49ers, Broncos, the most dominant Super Bowl of all time. It looked like the Eagles at one point was going to break that record, which I'm glad they didn't, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that was a one-sided game that was over by half time, where in that particular game, we obviously just came out and stuffed the Broncos from about halfway through halfway through the first quarter. We just knocked the stuffing out of them and did so all the way through to half time, and the game was over.
Yeah. So Red Jet Shell, she's put a few comments that I've put on the screen, but she's put there that Kansas City thought they had an easy mark and Philadelphia were proven wrong, and she respects Philadelphia for that. Like you, I've been impressed with Barkley, but interestingly enough, Barkley wasn't the reason that they won the Super Bowl, and I think that kind of made it a bit more impressive for me. It was the fact that, the Eagles performed well on all sides, offense, defense, special teams.
Yeah, Barkley had a statistically poor game, didn't he? And the Chiefs did what they went out to do and held him to under 3 yards a carry, I think. So,
and I think, like most, Kev Williams, predictor, winner of the playoffs in the house. Just a coincidence that he has access to the spreadsheet. But he's put there that he didn't want either team to win, but he didn't realise his hatred for the Chiefs was so deep until he was celebrating like crazy when the Eagles started demolishing them. And I said to you off air, Gareth, there was a few Chiefs fans at the watch party, and I'm always a bit apprehensive when you're decked out in your Niners gear and you see some Chiefs fans. Brad Simcox and the Chiefs fans in October were very gracious with us, but I was thinking they're going to get some cheeky digs in. They were very bullish at the start. Then, as the game went on, they went very quiet.
Quickly. Really?
And as the game was coming to an end, I went to kind of commiserate with them, and they kind of took a little bit of a dig at our Niners. And I said to you, I was a little bit like, hang on a minute. Yeah, you've beat us twice in the Super Bowl. And rather than hatred of the Chiefs, which is what I'm alluding to, Kev, it's more of a hatred of what they've done to us. But as I pointed out to them, Gareth, we were in it until we weren't. This Super Bowl wasn't even close for the Chiefs. And this must sting because it's similar to the one against the Buccaneers. So it just goes to show, is the blueprint out there on how you stop Andy Reid? Or am I just getting a bit too overexcited?
Well, last time, it was very much the same blueprint. And last time, after that Buccaneers loss, the Chiefs went out and made some quick changes and reinforced their O-line, and they may well need to do the same thing again. Unfortunately, this is part of the parity and the salary cap. When you're successful and you keep a team together, it's difficult to maintain that success because the salary cap starts catching up with you, and you've suddenly got to take tough decisions. And being able to recycle those experienced high cost players and constantly hit on young players in the draft or abandoned veterans who you might be able to pick up for cheap, it's very, very difficult to do that over and over again. It's difficult to do it once, and so it's very difficult to have to do that again. So a huge off season for the Chiefs. I think it's a huge off season for us. I think there's questions. Was it 2019, the Nick Foles Super Bowl? There was thought at the time that maybe the Eagles could build a dynasty. And of course, their head coach was gone within 2 years, and they looked to shambles. But they've reinvented themselves and come back twice, the same as we have. So I think at the moment, it's the Eagles are going to be the team to beat, and I think they're set up to potentially repeat this. I think they'll be there or thereabouts next year.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much at the Eagles. We've in that lovely period now where it's the off season, and to be honest, Gareth, I was going to say there's no days off unless your name's Chris Woods. Believe it or not, our insider Chris has alluded to some time off in Discord, which surprised me, but it might be linked to Najee Carrar's own contract negotiations. But I did look at the Chiefs because they have been the bane of our lives. So they currently have 11.5 mil in cap space, which is only 22nd in the NFL. And it looks like they've got 1, 2, 3 defensive linemen that need paying. Wharton, Charlie Boy, favourite of ours. Derek Naadi. They've got the safety, Justin Reed. Linebacker, Nick Bolton, who, to be fair, wasn't as good as I expected, though he did get some pressure on Hurts. Then on the offensive side of the ball, Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Justin Watson, Kareem Hunt, and the guard, Trey Smith. So as you said, there's going to be some interesting conversations because some players had said that they would take, obviously, a bit of a discount when you're in contention of a ring. But it can all come crashing down. Travis Kelce has come out today and said he's taken some time before he makes a decision whether he wants to continue to be the second best tight end in the NFL, because we all know the best one is. So yes, I'm getting those digs in early, Gareth, before anyone else leaves.
I don't know. I think Brock Bowers might be making a case already for number 2. So Kelsey might be dropping out, particularly from his performance. You may well have seen the short video that goes round where Mahomes is looking for somebody to pass it, and Kelsey's basically just stopped. He stopped at the line of scrimmage, and he's practically standing with his hands on his hips, watching Mahomes run for his life. And Kelsey's just standing there. He's not going to get the pass, and he's not making any effort to block for Mahomes at all. He's just standing there, just like a statue. And you're like, it's not a good look. I know sometimes you're told that's my play. I'm sticking in my zone. I'm the outlet, but it's never a good look. But I don't have a particular dislike of Kelsey, but I have quite enjoyed seeing some of these people come down with a bit of a bump. Let's face it. But I've got no particular beef with any of them.
Yeah, I mean, before we move off on the Super Bowl, there's a few more things that I want to talk about. Isn't it interesting when the Chiefs' offensive line get flagged for offensive holding? And interestingly, when they get flagged for offensive holding in the Super Bowl, they've got an 0-2 record. Isn't that interesting, Gareth? And I know non-Niners fans who will get hold of this will clip it and make it go viral. But it's all we've said since those 2 losses is we don't expect every call to go our way. We just wanted it to be fair.
Just want the 50-50s.
So I was quite interested to see. I mean, obviously, a lot of the build-up was, the game's rigged. It's all about the 3-peat. It's all about Taylor Swift. And, Brad Simcox, who was a Chiefs fan, he's been quite humble on social media afterwards, but I did see a cheeky tweet when he was similar to what you said. He was like, you talk about the script, you talk about it being rigged, but I think we're all that conditioned to it going the Chiefs' way. There was a moment in the third quarter, I think they were either 27-0 down or they were 34-0 down. Mahomes has done a little run around, and he's done a little shuttle pass to Kelsey, and they've just got the first down. And I turned to my mate Chris, and I was like, please, no. I've been here before, Gareth. Super Bowl. Mahomes does something on like 3rd and long. And then I think they scored the touchdown. And I thought, surely there's not enough time on the clock. As it transpired, I had nothing to worry about because I don't think any of us could have coped if they'd managed to pull this one out of the bag. What do you reckon?
No, I think that would have been a bit of a shocker to come back from 34 down. Falcons fans might have been happy to see that. But yeah, that would have been a shocker. It's interesting. You talked about Mahomes. I think out of 5 Super Bowls he's been to, and 3-2, I don't think Mahomes has really had a particularly good game in any one of them. Against us, he's been able to pull it out a few passes when it matters, and that is a good skill. I'm not knocking that, but he's hardly had a dominant performance in any game, and I think I've seen reference to that now. He's 3-2, and I think he's had 8 or 9 turnovers in those games, and only about 10 touchdowns. It's not a fantastic record over those particular big showcase games, and that seems to have been probably one of the worst games of his entire career. And he pulls it out in the Super Bowl, which
it was interesting. I mean, the touchdown
got to make you sick.
There was one to Hopkins, but the one where he threw it from deep, where literally I said the Eagles were playing prevent defense at this point, and he just kind of unloaded the bomb. But the reason we're talking Mahomes is Chiefs fans, non-Niners fans, like to come at us about Brock Purdy. You know, Brock's not elite, and Brock's not. Mahomes is a standard bearer. Like you said, Gareth, I went into this game on Sunday. I think, right, I'm a neutral. I'm not particularly fussed which team wins. I just want to watch. And we've said before on this show, the eye test and watching football without the emotion. I wasn't emotionally invested in this game.
No.
I wasn't drinking alcohol. So I was able to enjoy the game. I was able to kind of watch it unfold. And like you said, if he's the standard bearer of what's elite, and I've seen a few people compare him to LeBron on Twitter, because obviously LeBron going up against Michael Jordan for the greatest of all time, and people are using LeBron's losses against him. You know, I'm not a basketball fan, as in know it all, but Michael Jordan is always the greatest of all time when it comes to any discussions. And you think, is Mahomes, he wants to kind of be that Tom Brady discussion, but maybe he's not quite there yet, Gareth? Or do you think, again, I'm just reaching because I've lost another Super Bowl?
I think he's not there until he's got as many rings. And certainly people were talking about Brady being the GOAT, I think, when he had 4 or 5 rings, and I was sort of still very much, but you're forgetting Joe Cool. And then I think obviously leaving the Patriots and going win it with the Buccaneers, I think that's where I realised that any argument against Brady not being the GOAT, you just sound a bit stupid, because it's about results. And his results are all over his fingers whenever he goes anywhere, and you can't argue with that. And he's done it with entirely different teams in 2 different decades with 2 different teams. Mahomes has still got some way to go, and he's got a big challenge, because they've got to come back from this as well. And there is the Super Bowl hangover. They've got past it before. Well, but obviously they missed the Super Bowl for a year because they had the Super Bowl hangover. I think there's going to be some turnover, and it's a real leadership test for people like Mahomes and the other senior members of that team, as it is for every losing Super Bowl team.
That's the advantage of the NFL, isn't it? It's the whole trying to keep it competitive. Red Jet Shell, Wednesday Lives, were known for going down rabbit holes. Conspiracy theory, Gareth. She reckons that the NFL actually wanted KC to lose so they can engineer a comeback next year in our building, ironically, against none other than the Niners. Red Jet Shell, we need to speak positive vibes at this stage of the NFL calendar. Don't be putting stuff like that out in the universe.
No, I don't want to see that at all.
So I was going to say, how do we transition away from this talk? And apparently, Red Jet Shell has pulled the Debo. Now, what we mean by that, Gareth, I was just going up the chat when you were chatting, and it looks like that Red Jet Shell may have rocked a green jersey. Yeah, she's admitted it. So she's put funny fact. After Philadelphia won against Washington in the NFC Championship, she went on an Eagles podcast and decked out in a green jersey. So, Debo Samuel, we touched upon it a little bit in the pod last week when we were recording our awards show. There was a few people hung up that Debo had been sporting the Eagles jersey on Radio Row. I believe that might be linked now the news has come out. What do you reckon? Do you reckon it was a coincidence, or do you reckon it was a planned move?
I don't know. You can never tell. Obviously, he had his contract negotiations. I think a lot of people were a little bit disappointed with Debo, the way Debo went about those contract negotiations at the time. Unfortunately, he's a wide receiver. They seem to do it. These days, I imagine the players know that they're going to get photographed doing everything, and they wouldn't. he's not going to be surprised. Like, oh, someone photographed me in an Eagles shirt. I wonder if they're going to make something of it. Everything is, planned. Everything has got potentially a message, because it's going to happen. You take control of it because it's going to happen outside of your control in terms of what people say. So I think that was interesting. Whether Debo was saying he particularly wants the Eagles. Obviously, I think Panthers have been talked about because I think that's his hometown team. Obviously, he's put in the trade request since we've recorded last, which I thought was good. I think we have been talking for a while that we thought Debo's time with the team had come to an end this season. I think it's good, maybe, that he's put in that trade request. I got no issue with that. It seems to be that's going to be the best for both parties. I know people might say that can reduce his value, but I think also if a player wants to leave, you do have that opportunity potentially for a bidding war. And so that can drive the price up. And I think that's going to be the key thing now. It's who's it going to be and what the price is. I mean, I think there's differing views. I seem to recall Lee talking about him being worth a second, which I think I laughed at the time and still do. What do you think Debo is worth?
See, when the news broke that at the end of season meeting with Coach Shanahan, he'd asked to move, and then obviously the Niners have given him permission to go seek a trade. That only hurt his value in my eyes, because kind of the teams now know we're willing to give him up. So you've kind of shot yourself in the foot a little bit. I'm not an expert when it comes to salary cap, but I've seen some numbers bandied about. So many will be talking about the dead money. But for what David Lombardi said, it's not about that. So David Lombardi's tweeted out that the salary cap space carries over from season to season. So any savings are valuable, and ultimately they all add to the same dollar pool. Yep. So that was quite interesting to look at. And he then goes on to say, Gareth, that in the case of Debo being moved before the 22nd of March, before the option bonus hits, that is, the Niners would open up $15.4 million in that long-term reservoir and pick up a draft pick, which also has cap value too. So it ties into the bigger roster picture, headlined by Payne, Brock Purdy. Now, I think he's worn the Eagles jersey, as Red Jet Shell said there, on purpose. He's got the same agent as AJ Brown. We've seen this playbook before when he scrubbed his social media. I think his brother was arguing on Brad Graham's live stream about, Debo's gone. I'm gutted to see him go, but unfortunately for us, to answer your question this way, he is coming off a down year. 51 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns. So Nick Wagner, ESPN, he expects the return to be low. He feels we may be forced to take a day 3, which is rounds 5 and 7, possibly another late round pick just to get him off the books. Jeremy Fowler has mentioned the Commanders, the Steelers, possibly the Houston Texans. I mean, he's total. Yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, there's going to be teams out there who want him. I think the ones you've mentioned, Miami, obviously, Carolina, potentially, he might be interested in. He's going to have some options. I think we are going to have a little bit of leverage with that. And of course, we can compare it against the fact that if we cut him, he's going to get signed by someone. What would the compensatory pick be worth? I think if we let him go, does that happen? I think if you cut a player, or is it just where their contract ends? I'm not sure how that works out, but to answer your question there, apparently it says something, release or trade June the 1st, all of the dead cap remaining on the salary accelerate into the current year. So it's somewhat similar that I think the Jets are going through with Adams. I think he's waiting to be released because I think he gets all the money, and and I think we've seen it before where the team then taking him on can pay him the league minimum because he's getting his money from somewhere else. Yeah.
So I don't know whether that changes your viewpoint, Gareth. Sorry, I just thought I'd answer that question while you were talking.
I think he's. I mentioned this on the last show. We are unbalanced in our roster building. The fact that our receiver room is taking far too much money when only one guy can catch a ball on any one play. It's mad, but I'd still listen to trades for Ayuk, and we lose the cover. But if you told me that Ayuk had relapsed from his injury, and we were going to go in the season with Purcell and Jennings, I wouldn't be too. I'd say we're probably thin. We should probably sign a veteran. But on the other hand, I wouldn't actually be that scared of going into the season with Purcell and Jennings. Because remember, we've got the best pass catching tight end in George Kittle, and we've got the best catching running back in Christian McCaffrey. I think we do need receiver help. We could do with another tight end who can catch. We could really do with like a third down back who could catch out of the backfield. But I don't think wide receiver is a need. I think it's great that we can get rid of Debo amicably if he's happy to go as well. I think if we got offered a third, we should snap somebody's hands off to take that. I think the best we might be able to get is something like a third and a fifth, and give Debo and a sixth back, something like that, or maybe swapping those fifths just to balance the deal out. And I would be happy for that.
So Rob has obviously listened to what you said there, and he's put our team's asking for Ayuk right now.
Wouldn't have thought so.
I think you're like me. So I caught the John Chapman, Wayne Breezy show last night, and Chapman was talking about how much he disliked the Ayuk deal and how bad it looks at the moment. And I think you said that they'd mentioned that wide receiver suddenly becomes a more important need if Debo goes. And I think what we've got to give John Lynch the credit for is, we all know Brock Purdy's getting paid. Obviously, we've been quite top-heavy for a while with some of these contracts. The rookies coming in and playing the way they've played has helped, because obviously, if you keep rookies, you keep cheap. Mm-hmm. But I do think the salary cap is expected to go up. Obviously, after the COVID year, they had to adjust it, and I think that's going to go in our favour. But the problem is with Debo, you get emotionally attached to these players. Conor Ryan, coming to you, big Debo fan. I know you were a bit gutted when all this talk started, but it isn't the Debo that we fell in love with in 2021, Gareth. You know, he caught 77 passes, 1,405 yards, 6 touchdowns. But since then, he hasn't caught more than 900 yards in a season. And maybe any trade is kind of one of those deals where we have to take something from another team to give. Do you know when you do these deals, something like when we took Trent Williams from Washington, you know, what did we give it, a third and a fifth? But they wanted him off the team. And you think teams now, like you said, nobody's coming in and offering. I mean, the Jets were rumoured to be sniffing around him a couple of years ago when they were going to give us a first, and that was the talk. But, I mean, I'd love to know what you guys at home think. Obviously, we are gone live for a reason. Do drop it in the chat what you think.
What is Debo worth? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ayuk as well. I believe his rehab is going okay. I know towards the back end of last season, he was in and around the locker room. And, you know, when the beat writers are kind of there waiting to get their interviews with the players, you know, he was hooping, he was playing basketball, he was in the locker room. But I haven't seen too much on social media, which sometimes is a good thing. You're doing your rehab away from the cameras. But Red Jet Shell has put there that apparently he isn't ready to return until possibly Christmas. So who knows?
Really? Wow.
You mentioned Purcell. But I mean, surely you can pick up some wide receivers in the draft, but you don't have to pick them up first and second round. Surely, Gareth. Am I right in what I'm thinking there?
No, I think it's been somewhere where we've struggled. Obviously, Ayuk, Debo, high picks, and obviously Jennings. I think it was the 7th worked out, but it took him a few years. I think we saw a bit of Jacob Cowing, and I think we saw more from Cowing than we did from Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell, who have been two bad misses, I think, out of the wide receiver classes. I do think there's wide receiver it's a valuable position, but I don't necessarily think it's premium. There always seem to be a lot of good wide receivers who come out in the draft, and there always seem to be good, veteran wide receivers who are available, who are the kind of guys. Remember when we signed Sanders, 2019, that kind of player, the guy who isn't going to be in the top 10 or the top 20 of receivers, but a guy who can run a route and catch a ball. And that's kind of what we might need. I'm very happy to see Ayuk back. I just think it's the Purcell, nothing against Purcell, but picking the wide receiver last year, it bothered me at the time, and it's bothered me all year, and it still bothered me that we still have that much another 10 million in the wide receiver room, no matter how good Purcell ends up being. I just don't think wide receiver, it's that important to have that much money in it. That money needs to be on the trenches or in the trenches that those guys have taken. The Debo's money, I'll take the dead money because that's 15, 20 million. That's a couple of decent linemen either side of the ball, rather than, particularly on the offensive side, sorry guys, but shopping in the bargain basement for offensive linemen. We could actually go out and get one who's in demand.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the Purcell pick when you see we could have still got Cooper DeJean, who scores the pick six. And I know hindsight's wonderful, but I have seen a few people, Gareth, say he was still on the board when we picked Purcell. Rob doesn't think we'll fetch more than the fourth. If we can even trade him, he doesn't see teams value him as much. But like you said, there's certain teams like the Panthers, maybe it's Washington. There'll be someone who'll want to take a punt. Colin has joined us and believes that there'll be a veteran available that gets cut. And Kev is saying what I think we were alluding to last week before the Debo news broke, that Debo is worth him plus any picks the Browns.
That's what I said. Yeah, that first, second, and Debo, and maybe that is something that we can do with Debo is speak to those teams and have a look around, particularly even if it's just a good rotational defensive lineman or something. If we can get that back and balance people as somebody else's cap issue, for them to take Debo, then there's a deal to be done.
See, I was going to start tonight's show, Gareth, by saying the road to Super Bowl 60 starts now. I was going to give a countdown of how many days till the NFL season starts. And Tracy always laughs because when we met in 2018, I told her about this wonderful game of American football, and it only lasts from September to February. And then we started producing content, and then we started doing podcasts, and there is no such thing as an off-season. And we're getting ready for Lee Gowland's mock drafts. We're getting ready for all the crazy off-season talk. But the more I think about Debo wearing that jersey last week, I think it's a little bit to I think the team have asked him to take a pay cut. John Chapman alluded to this last night, so this isn't just me kind of pie in the sky. I don't know where the basis of it is, but maybe Debo was asked to stay on the team. You need to restructure. And Debo's basically said no. Now, maybe the Niners have turned on Gareth. Well, maybe another way. Maybe the team have said, right, go get a trade partner. And then in a couple of weeks' time, when Debo comes back to the table and the Niners say, we haven't had any phone calls for you, Debo. No trade partners. Then, rather than getting cut and facing the possibility of not knowing where you're going, then do they offer him the reduction in pay? So maybe his time isn't over. But I think as Niners fans, we've got PTSD when it comes to contracts. We want them done. We want the Brock Purdy one done. I don't want to be sat here, Gareth, end of May, talking about another contract. And
no, and it's a distraction from the front office who have bigger things to get done, including, I think, Kittle is having words. Obviously, there's Greenlaw, there's Funga, there's other players who we should be spending that time working out the numbers with. And I think that's, maybe you're right. Maybe Debo has been asked to take a pay cut. I also think last year, people called Debo out and said, you're not having any impact. And Debo came back and said, well, that's because I'm not getting the ball. And then we tried to give him the ball and he steadfastly refused to catch it at important points. And I think maybe I think the change is good for him as well. I think sometimes it can get stale. I think what made him special no longer works. I think we've seen that it's become predictable, the special things that Debo was able to do. And I think going somewhere else, I think I can see him wanting to go as well, and going somewhere to be the guy, because it's going to be his next contract. He's getting to that age. Do you want to be sitting there being a bit part player of a 650 yard season, something like that? Or do you want to go somewhere where you are the man, you are the top wide receiver, and they're going to pay you like it?
Well, as Rob has said there, if Debo doesn't find a trade partner, he could end up on that infamous Jimmy G sideline, which Red Jet Shell was very impressed with. But before we move on from Debo, and we talk about Dre Greenlaw, which I know the chat are wanting to go down. When I was looking at Brock Purdy, the average depth of his target actually went up this year, which I thought was quite crazy, given, as you said, Ayuk wasn't there. I did believe that Brock would focus on those short and intermediate routes, but obviously CMC was out injured. And as if you said,
that was a big reason for it. I think he didn't have that drop off.
So, yeah, so
go on.
I was just going to say, without those two, Gareth, without his most explosive elite weapons, Brock kind of had to put on game tape that he could be aggressive. He stayed aggressive on those deep routes. It did lead to some interceptions, and I think we all agree Brock is an aggressive quarterback and he's going to take some chances. And I think you said it off air. I'm like you. I don't want to see the front office go get him another receiver at this point. What I want to see is a better O-line.
Much better O-line.
Possibly some dynamic speed at running back. Then wide receiver would be my option. Possibly another tight end to complement Kittle. So I don't want us to make a splashy move. I mean, I've seen a few people in the group talking about Tyreek Hill, obviously Adams from the Jets.
No, really, no, just no. I just don't think they're needed. I don't think they're needed at all.
So a few people think we can package Debo with Moody. There's not much love.
Buy one, get one free
for kickers in here.
Poor Moody.
But we'll transition nicely off Brock.
Well, I think we've still got the family man on the books. I don't think we've cut him yet. Maybe we can chuck him in.
I was just about to say, we've unsuspended him, Gareth, but that has led me to, I don't know if you caught much of the interviews last week. So Fred Warner, fresh off his sponsorship deal with Experian, he was rocking an Experian t-shirt and he was making the circuit. So he talked to Will Gavin, he talked to Pat McAfee. Now he was talking about giving up some money to get Myles Garrett, and he was talking about how much he needs Dre Greenlaw back. So Ty has thrown an interesting figure out there, and I want to get your thoughts. So Ty believes that someone's going to come along and throw 20 million at Dre Greenlaw, which, if that's the case, I can't see us matching that. Can you?
Sadly not. I can obviously see, I think it's reciprocal that he knows he'll play the best football of his career next to Fred. I think there is potentially that interest in coming back. I'm pretty sure Salah was with the team when we drafted him, wasn't he? I don't think he was after Salah left, if I've got that right. So I think there's something there on a 1 year prove it deal, potentially very high incentives. He is coming back off a serious injury, which he re-injured again. And I think someone might pay him that 20 million, but I think you'd have to be cautious on that you might give him that much money if he hits every single target and plays every single game. And then whether we could stretch to that, I'd love to see it. I think it's bad news for I think Havunga is probably gone. I think he can definitely get 12 million somewhere else. I think he'll be in demand, and I think he's just dropped down our list of needs with the safeties we have drafted. So I think there's potentially a bit of money there. We need some serious money in the trenches. I think we're okay in the rest of the secondary. I just hope we can make it work with Dre in terms of the incentive to say, look, just give us this other year. You've had a year robbed, and you had the chance to perform in the Super Bowl robbed by an injury. Give us another year at maybe something that we can manage 15, 16. And then you'll be another free agent at the end of that. Go and put a good year on tape, and you'll get 25 next year if you prove to everybody you're fit, healthy, and you haven't lost your intensity, which is a risk because that's a huge part of his game, and that's something that might take a little bit of while to get back.
So do you know when we record the podcast? So it's 10 to 9 in the UK at the moment, Gareth. So it's 1:45 in the afternoon in San Francisco. And sometimes we record the pod and then we congratulate ourselves on a half-decent job. And some breaking news happens just after we've recorded. Well, our good friend Larry Kruger has just tweeted out that KNBR have done an interview with Matt Burrows, who believes that Dre Greenlaw is gone. And the sense is Greenlaw wants the opportunity to run his own defense and be the Batman rather than the Robin. And I'm sat here thinking, I get it. I just don't want to see it.
No. And I don't want to see it in another NFC team.
So the reason I went down that, people, we are going to keep the show to an hour tonight because Gowland's not here and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole. And we have talked off air. We are going to be fully involved in this off season. So at the moment, we are recording one show a week, whether that's the live or a pod. But as we get into the off season, we're going to start increasing those numbers. So it is important that you do like, subscribe, turn on all those notifications, tell all your friends, Gareth, all that good stuff, because we do enjoy the content. We have just renewed our StreamYard subscription, so we can't let that go to waste.
No,
if nobody watches.
I was thinking we all chip in for that, and then we'll never hear from Lee again, as he's done a runner with it, but he's not going to go too far on that. But yeah, and there's stuff people can get involved in. The 49 Faithful UK Awards are currently live and will be live till the end of the week. I think until perhaps end of Sunday, maybe something like that, a week after the Super Bowl, and then we'll be able to announce some winners on next week's pod.
Yeah, so I didn't share them on X or Instagram, Gareth. So the 49er Faithful UK Awards is currently open for the faithful to vote. So after this show finishes, I think I might share the link on Twitter because we've gone down a different route this year, haven't we, Gareth? Where we normally put the polls up where people can see who they're voting for. But this year we so if you're not familiar with the 49er Faithful UK Awards, I'm going to keep saying the full name, Gareth, because I don't want to get it wrong. But we basically, me, you, Lee and Nadji, championed some candidates, some nominees for these awards, but it's for the faithful to vote. So we haven't had as many votes as we'd have liked, but we do believe it was to do with the Super Bowl, and people were focusing on trying to get one over on you and Kev.
And a down season, I think, as well. When we've had a great season, I think it's easy to get excited about who's had a good season. So
I will share the link, as you said, Gareth. So we'll keep that open till Sunday. Now, I'm not sure whether we're going to reveal the winners next week or whether we're going to keep that for the week after. Because, as you rightly pointed out, since Lee has got his new job, he's just took his finger off the pulse, Gareth.
Hasn't he?
So, you good people, we haven't forgotten. We still need to do the review show, don't we, Gareth, of the season?
Yeah, we've had to, I think, we needed a bit of time before doing that, didn't we? We've needed some time to digest the season we've just had, So
we will be doing that. We will also be doing the award show, which is always good fun, especially when Lee and Nadji never deviate off topic and never go down a rabbit hole. And they're not here to defend themselves, Gareth. So, yeah, we will get that out there. And as Luke has put there, do hit that like button. It does mean a lot to us. So, as I said, Red Jet Shell, she's put there, Gareth, that she wants the show to keep going. We are in the off-season, but the grind never stops unless you are called Chris Wood, as I said earlier. We do appreciate everybody who subscribes, who watches. We will be getting some guests on over the next coming weeks. If you are watching and want to be a guest, do drop me a message on whatever platform you feel best. I check all of them apart from Blue Sky. I haven't quite got to grips with that, Gareth. How's that going for you?
I keep forgetting it exists. I'm not that into social media, really. I enjoy doing this, but I don't have too much time or inclination. But I dip in every now and then. So
yeah, I was just going to say, just send me a message because, like I said, there's a few people who have lined up to be guests. I know Johnny Dell wants to come back on, but we need to get him on at the same time that Nadji is here because he wasn't on the show when we had him on last time.
Is Nadji going to correct him?
It's going to be an interesting battle of the football gods, isn't it? Nadji and Johnny Dell. I think that might be a show, Gareth, where whoever me or you host, we just kind of sit back and let them two go at it.
Yeah, no. So I'd love to. Yeah, see Johnny Dell stuff is great. So yeah, it's great. We're lucky to have him on the show. So
yeah. So again, if you're not familiar with Johnny's work, do go check him out. And we always say on the 49 Faithful UK Live, compared to what I call the real content creators, your Chapmans, your Breezes, your Johnny Dells, your Brad Graves, they know what they're talking about. They're the people that I watch. We just do this for fun. We do this as a hobby. Still been no news, Gareth, about the 49ers in London, which has disappointed me because Matt Miyoko and Jennifer Lee Chan did get me very excited ahead of the Super Bowl.
I think it's on. I felt closer this year than any of the previous years. I think it's the downside, I think, as someone has pointed out, is that the Niners fans travel well. There's Niners fans across the US, and people don't want to give up a lucrative home game where they know they'll pack out Niners fans in, for example, Cleveland. I think has been mentioned. They don't want to lose the Niners game. They'd rather play one of the teams that they think perhaps that they're not going to be able to have such a premium value on those tickets. That makes sense. But
I think it's going to
come to
happen.
London.
But I think it's going to happen 2026. I think it's going to be when we have the 9 home games again, and they have to give one up because they've hosted the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to come over as the road team. I don't know why. I kind of got excited when the fixtures were kind of announced in London, and then Miyoko mentioned it. But then I've gone away and I've done some research. And one thing that sticks in my mind, Gareth, is when they announced all these international marketing rights back in 2022, and we got the UK. In the article that I read on the Niners website, it said that each NFL team had to play an international game in the 8-year span from that date. And technically the Niners have played in Mexico. So I don't know whether the NFL can make them come across. And obviously for our friends based on the West Coast, any game in London is a 6 a.m. start for them. So again, I don't know how that works in with the TV markets. If the Niners are going to be a Super Bowl contender next year, which we believe they will be, that doesn't just hurt the kind of revenues of whichever away team it is. Well, it also hurts the marketing, as in the TV rights, if that makes sense.
At least, hopefully. But of course, the Rams are going to be playing a game in, was it Melbourne or Adelaide in 2026? And of course, we play them away that season. So,
Gareth, I can't add any more world clocks to my phone. I've got London, San Francisco, Cleveland, Las Vegas, New York, Singapore, when our good friend Derek was there. But yeah, I don't think I'd be jetting off to Australia. I've got more chance of getting back to San Francisco than Australia.
That's a brutal one. Obviously, great news. I think there's going to be a game in Dublin. I think that could be a cracking atmosphere. I don't know really why, but I think the sort of the Steelers with the Irish rights, I think that's probably I don't know, it just seems like a good fit. I don't know. So I think that would be a great game.
So for those people like Red Jet Shell who are panicking thinking Niners in Ireland, what Gareth is meaning is Michael McQuaid and the Pro Football Ireland crew have been working really hard to get their presence heard. Pat McAfee and the college football crew came over last season, and the NFL are going to send the Steelers, and I believe it's the Packers, if the stuff I'm seeing, playing a game in Dublin. So Michael McQuaid, he was with Gridiron magazine 2 seasons ago. He worked closely with myself to get the group some discounts and obviously shout us out. He is now a certified celebrity. He's been on Pat McAfee. Dropped him a message when I heard the news, Gareth, and he's been kind enough to message me back. So it is good to see the kind of growth that the NFL is having globally, and not just in the UK, as you've mentioned there, Australia, Brazil, Ireland. So I don't think I'll get out to Dublin. I think Gary Thorpe might get across because he went to the college football game that was there this year. Would it be something you'd look at, going over to Dublin?
Well, probably not if it's not Niners. No, and I mean even when it's London games. If it's not Niners, I'm not that fussed. I think it's the cost that I know going to London and perhaps overnight and probably a train and everything that would go along with it in terms of refreshment. Going to see, I don't know, New York play the Panthers or whatever in London would cost me as much as the return flight to San Francisco does. And it just kind of, when you think of it that way, you're like, I'm actually not that bothered about watching the Giants, Panthers, or whatever in London. And I think from what I've seen when I watch the London games, the atmosphere is a bit disappointing. I think there's a lot of people who clearly it's a lot of different fans, and maybe the games haven't been that inspiring. But compared to that game in Germany, where it looked like it was absolutely rocking, London fans need to sort themselves out, I think.
I think for me, I've never done a London game, and like you, I've been waiting for the Niners. But I think what the NFL has done really well, I think the die-hard fans are now starting to realise a game in America is just as you said, cost effective. It's going to London,
We're playing in New York, playing
Yeah.
in New Orleans next year. I think I'm like Lee. I think I'm going to take interest in when those fixtures are out and start looking at costs for those.
So on our YouTube, we do have some old episodes of our experiences of going to San Francisco. So if you are a UK faithful and you're watching and you're thinking about going over to San Francisco, obviously, Gareth, the road to Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco has started now. I have seen a few people look at going over to San Francisco next February. So I believe you can put a deposit down to get access to tickets at Levi's for the Super Bowl for the lowly sum of $2,500, Gareth, which is just a
Wow.
deposit. So Oliver Stretfield is rumoured to have put a couple down from what I've seen on social media. But I know Lee is possibly looking at a group meetup in San Francisco for the Super Bowl, but I think he's meaning it more in San Francisco rather than at the stadium. I don't think it's something that I'll be able to commit to at the moment.
Unlike, I think every hotel is going to be expensive. I think there's perhaps maybe not so much from the UK, but flights might not be that different. But it's probably going to be a stretch for me.
But what has been great is seeing the build up already. So the NBA All-Star game is in the Bay Area, and then obviously the NFL released the logo for next year's Super Bowl, and I've seen all the promos of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Who are we playing?
Yeah, well, if the conspiracy theories are to be believed, Gareth, you look at the colours and you look at, maybe the Niners are going to be there. Before we finish off, the SF Niners have dropped a tweet where insider Matt Burrows believes there is a strong chance that both Greenlaw and Hufanga leave in free agency, as you said earlier. So, it's, Gareth, maybe.
True. I mean, not to disparage people inside this, but yeah, I can see endless articles. Every player is going to be could be signing for every team, and every player is being linked everywhere. It's just that time of year where you can just grab any player, any team, and write a story. But yeah, I mean, I think we know probably Hufanga can get more money than we need to pay him. Greenlaw, yeah, I think it's Greenlaw's. Does he want to stay with us for a season, or does he want to go somewhere else and be the leader of that defense, particularly on a rebuilding team? Well, there's some interesting stuff around, like Washington. You can see that's going to be potentially an attractive team this year. I think if you're a player, avoid the Jets, avoid the Cowboys. Who else is a bit of a dumpster fire?
Careful, Gareth. I'm joking. To be fair, avoid the Jets. You're right. What's interesting when you said Washington there, this time last year, Ayuk was kind of linked to Washington because he's a big fan of Daniels. As you said, Adam Peters has gone there. Obviously, they made the NFC Championship game. I believe they've got quite a bit of cap space. So it's going to be interesting. I've heard some cheeky rumours that the Ravens might add Debo. They're very run heavy. Add Debo Samuel wide back to Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. Could that be a route that they go down? But as we said at the top of the show, we ain't going anywhere, Gareth. The off-season is in full sway. We will be back next week. I just want to say thank you for joining me, Gareth. As always.
I wouldn't want to stand you up. I mean, who'd do that, obviously?
Oh, I appreciate that. We will be back next week, but we just like to tease the faithful by making them wait. Is it going to be a live? Is it going to be a pod? It could even be both.
We don't know ourselves.
Yeah. Well, Lee's gone and got himself one of these pesky things called a job.
Yeah, employed again.
And then he has to watch Sunderland play. And then obviously Nadji's obviously busy. So there's just me and yourself tonight who had nothing on. And we're able to jump on and talk to these good people.
So that makes us sound very sad. We cleared our diaries and turned down multiple better offers to spend the evening on YouTube with the faithful.
We did. And you weren't hosting. You were the
Yeah,
guest.
great.
You behaved yourself.
I
It was a
did.
pleasure as always. As I said, we will be back next week with the winners of the 49er Faithful UK Awards. But all that is left for me to say, Gareth, is until next time, Faithful, stay safe. And as always, go Niners.
Go Niners.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in our heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, deep card. Garrison Hurst, stiff farm going 99. Don't